welcome to the 79th episode of Jazzology presented by Savage Content. I'm your host, Willard Jenkins, and we're here giving two jazz fans the opportunity to compete for a chance to win $100. Each contestant will be asked questions worth 2 points. If they're unable to answer correctly, their opponent will have a chance to steal the question for 1 point. We'll ask 10 questions, and at the end of the 10 questions, the person with the lowest score will get a bonus question for the opportunity to tie the score, no matter how far they're behind in the score. If they're successful, the game will go to sudden death. The person in the lead at the end of regulation will go first, and each contestant will take turns trying to answer the sudden death multiple choice question until we have a winner. And now let's meet our contestants. Our returning champion for this 79th episode of Jazzology is Bob Blumenthal. Bob Blumenthal was a contributing editor to the Boston Phoenix and a contributor to the Boston Globe. He was one of 6 commissioners who selected the White House Record Library and has written hundreds of album notes, of which 2 won Grammy Awards. Bob Blumenthal's book, Jazz, An Introduction to the History and Legends Behind America's Music, was hailed as the single best compact introduction to jazz currently available by the Wall Street Journal. His second book, Saxophone Colossus, A Portrait of Sonny Rollins, was written in collaboration with photographer John Abbott. In 2005, Bob Blumenthal received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Jazz Journalists Association. Welcome back, Bob.
Happy to be here. Glad to see you, Willard.
Our challenger for this 79th episode of Jazzology is veteran jazz broadcaster Arturo Gomez. Arturo Gomez has been at KUVO since the spring of 2003. Before that, Arturo was the music director of Miami's jazz station for 13 years. An award-winning music director, Arturo Gomez has been awarded Music Director of the Year on 6 occasions and has also been the recipient of the prestigious Duke Du Bois Lifetime Achievement and Bobby Jackson Jazz Ambassador honors. After 22 years as music director, Arturo Gomez is now the cultural ambassador of KUVO Jazz and serves as a music consultant for special projects, such as Jazz Appreciation Month. He is currently a member of KUVO Jazz's 40th Anniversary Committee. And now let's get to today's Jazzology. Welcome, Arturo.
Well, thank you very much. I am honored to have been invited to participate, and I feel like a rookie coming off the bench to go face Pedrito Martinez on the mound. The champion. I hope I don't.
If it makes me feel any better, I've lost a little something on my fastball.
Well, Bob, as our reigning champion, you go first.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I am.
Bob Blumenthal, who among the following musicians performed most frequently at the Monterey Jazz Festival? And I should say this is the first of our Jazz Festival questions as we are in Jazz Festival season. Who amongst the musicians performed most frequently at Monterey? Would that have been A, Dave Brubeck, B, Miles Davis, C, Charles Lloyd, D, Herbie Hancock, or E, Louis Armstrong?
Well, when I heard the question, I hoped that John Lewis would be a choice because he was the musical director at Monterey for well over a decade, I believe, but he's not among the options. And, given Louis Armstrong's health in the last years of his life, I'm not sure that he had enough time available to run out more appearances than the other individuals that you've mentioned. And having never attended Monterey, having only, read about it, heard the recordings, I am going to pick A, Dave Brubeck, because year after year, while Brubeck was alive and Newport would rotate artists in and out, Dave Brubeck was there every year. And Dave Brubeck had a West Coast connection, as Charles Lloyd does. So I am going to say A, Dave Brubeck.
And that would be incorrect. So Arturo has an opportunity to steal the point right off the bat.
Interesting, because I too would have said Dave Brubeck because of the very fact, the West Coast connection.
All right, well, let's repeat the question.
No, okay, go right ahead.
Who among the following musicians performed most frequently at the Monterey Jazz Festival? And A, Dave Brubeck has, to some folks' surprise, been eliminated. B, Miles Davis. C, Charles Lloyd. D, Herbie Hancock. Or E, Louis Armstrong.
Well, I'm going to go with Charles Lloyd, an obscurity choice, so to say.
You're going to go with Charles Lloyd?
Yes.
And I bet you're going to go with Charles Lloyd on the basis of Forest Flower, right?
Well, because I don't think Miles has performed that many times at Monterey. And Herbie Hancock, he's probably been there several times. And obviously, we know that Pops, Louis Armstrong, his career didn't overlap with Monterey Jazz Festival as long as some of the other festivals he partook in.
But
so,
you see Charles Lloyd.
I'm going to throw a curveball there with Charles Lloyd.
That too is incorrect. The correct answer is D, Herbie Hancock.
Makes sense.
There are 17 times, with I believe an 18th coming up this year. So we are at 0-0. And Arturo Gomez is up next. Arturo, which of the following musicians is not, and I emphasize, is not a member of the Downbeat Magazine Hall of Fame? Would that be A, Jimmy Garrison, the great bassist? B, Bobby Blue Bland, the great blues shouter? C, tenor saxophonist Charlie Rouse? D, bebop trumpeter Kenny Dorham? Or E, all of the above?
This is very interesting because those are all fine players, but I would say they're not like at the top echelons of their, well, maybe with KD, Kenny Dorham, perhaps an exception, even though his career was short-lived. I'm going to roll the dice on this one because Bobby Blue Bland, obviously a great blues shouter and singer. Jimmy Garrison, outstanding, best known, I guess, with Coltrane, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to roll the dice on this one and say all of the above.
And you are correct. Although, to be grammatically correct, perhaps it's best to say none of the above.
Good point.
Bob, you're up next, Bob.
Okay.
Bob, the young trumpeter, Ambrose Akinmusire, achieved his bachelor's degree in music at which institution? Did Ambrose go to A, the New School, B, the Manhattan School of Music, C, Rutgers University, D, Berklee College of Music, or E, New England Conservatory?
Well, I know that Ambrose grew up in Berkeley, California, if I'm not mistaken, and you don't have any West Coast schools there, so that gives me no help at all. I'm going to eliminate Berkeley and New England because I live in Boston, and I think I would have heard him play if he had been a student at one of those schools. He would have definitely been one of the featured improvisers in concerts they had. So it's down to the unholy three of New York jazz education. And I'm going to say A, the new school.
That is incorrect. Arturo with another opportunity to steal the point.
Ooh.
Arturo.
Oh, this is a very, very interesting.
Trumpeter Ambrose Akinmusri achieved his bachelor's degree in music at which institution? And A, the new school has been eliminated. Would that have been B, the Manhattan School of Music? C, Rutgers University? D, Berklee College of Music? Or E, New England Conservatory?
Interesting, because first of all, I think I've learned the correct pronunciation of his surname instead of Musier. I like the way you pronounce it. And my good friend and ace in the place, Bobby Sanabria, has talked to me about him. And because of that and his connection, I'm going to choose the Manhattan School of Music.
And you are correct. Ambrose Akinmusri did indeed get his bachelor's degree in music at the Manhattan School of Music. So Arturo, you're up next. Arturo, which of the following ancestor musicians, and here we go, we're back in the jazz. Which of the following ancestor musicians performed the most times at the Newport Jazz Festival? Would that have been A, Louis Armstrong, B, Benny Goodman, C, Count Basie, D, Duke Ellington, or E, Miles Davis?
Well, as suggested to share my thought process, of course, Pops played there several times. Was unaware that Benny played there frequently. Duke Ellington, well, 1956, what a banner year. I'm going to go with Miles Dewey Davis III.
That is incorrect.
Okay.
And Bob with a chance to steal the point. As a New Englander, Bob, you got to get this one. Bob, which of the following ancestor musicians performed the most times at the Newport Jazz Festival? Would that have been A, Louis Armstrong, B, Benny Goodman, C, Count Basie, D, Duke Ellington, and E, Miles Davis has been eliminated?
Well, I can say that I never, unfortunately, got to experience Armstrong live, but I did see the other three who remain, and I saw two of them in George Wein productions. And in fact, if you had to ask me the musician I saw most frequently at George Wein events, I would go with C, Count Basie.
You're going with C, Count Basie?
Mm-hmm.
That is incorrect. The correct answer is D, Duke Ellington, performed most frequently at the Newport Jazz Festival. Okay, Bob, you're up next. Time to play some catch-up.
Indeed.
Bob, the vocalist Giacomo Gates, while performing at a jazz festival in Fairbanks, Alaska, was encouraged by which of the following vocal luminaries to pursue a singing career? Would that have been A, Sarah Vaughan, B, Betty Carter, C, Eddie Jefferson, D, John Hendricks, or E, Ella Fitzgerald?
Once again, as you were posing the question, I was saying, boy, I hope Sheila Jordan's a choice, because she's the kind of person who would go out and encourage other vocalists, but she's not there. And, you know, I'm not sure when Giacomo got into his vocal career beyond his time in Alaska, which makes me wonder if Eddie Jefferson, had the opportunity in his shortened lifetime to actually meet Giacomo. So it gets down to, in my mind, two people who I would expect to provide that kind of encouragement, Betty Carter or John Hendricks. And I'm going to go with D. John Hendricks.
That is incorrect.
I'm batting 1,000 in the wrong direction today.
So let me ask the question again. Vocalist Giacomo Gates, while performing at a jazz festival in Fairbanks, Alaska, and as his story went, he went up there to work on the pipeline. Well, Giacomo Gates, while performing at a jazz festival in Fairbanks, Alaska, was encouraged by which of the following vocal luminaries to pursue a singing career? Would that have been A, Sarah Vaughan, B, Betty Carter, C, Eddie Jefferson, D, John Hendricks, or E, Ella Fitzgerald?
John was eliminated.
John Hendricks has been eliminated. Right. I was just getting ready to say that. Thank you.
I talked to Giacomo about this when he was out here in Denver many years ago, and he told me who it was. I'm just now trying to see if my memory banks can retain the name of that person. It was quite surprising. I do recall that. I'm talking about maybe 13, 14 years ago, maybe even more. I'm going to go with Sassy, Sarah Vaughan.
And that is correct. And that was an interesting process of elimination there, because and I was thinking, I was following Bob's process of elimination, and I think some folks may think to themselves, well, I don't know about Sarah Vaughan encouraging other singers, but she did indeed encourage Giacomo Gates to pursue a career in singing. All right, so it's our time for our mid-show break. And this week we're spotlighting No Regrets, the music and spirit of Billie Holiday, an in-depth 13-episode radio and live streaming documentary series celebrating Billie Holiday's extraordinary musical legacy. The program explores her early life, Billie Holiday's groundbreaking singing style, and the powerful impact of her rendition of Strange Fruit had on the civil rights movement. No Regrets is produced by award-winning Steve Robinson and written by yours truly. No Regrets is narrated by Rhonda Hamilton. The series features interviews with Angela Davis, Cassandra Wilson, Beth Roars, Andromeda Toure, Diane Reeves, Phil Schaap, Dee Dee Bridgewater, Renee Marie, Dan Morgenstern, and many others. All episodes of No Regrets, the music and spirit of Billie Holiday, are available to free stream and may be accessed at savagecontent.com. And this week's album of the week is by the young tenor saxophonist out of Portland, Oregon. Her name is Nicole Glover. Nicole Glover is also a member of the all-woman band Artemis. Nicole's latest release is titled Memories, Dreams, and Reflections on the Savant label. So do check out Nicole Glover. And it's time for our weekly question. And Arturo, since you are brand new to the set, we'll ask you our first question, which is, Arturo Gomez, tell us, how did you fall in love with jazz?
Interesting question, because coming up in the 60s, I was, a sweet soul man when I was in high school coming up. And then I became a hardcore funkster in the 70s. But late at night, after I started working, when I would come on my way home, I would tune in. I grew up in Pasadena at this time, California. I would listen to the old KBCA or KKGO, which was a commercial 24-hour jazz station. And I would listen to jazz at night, kind of like to wind down, so to say, on my way home from work. And I didn't go to any jazz concerts or buy any jazz records per se until about the mid 80s when I started hearing Wynton, and the one group that really drew me to the ground zero was the group Out of the Blue and their first album on Blue Note, OTB. And from that point on, I was hooked. Even though I did have some jazz background, my dad was a big fan of Dinah Washington, and I was a big fan of Latin jazz, Cal Tjader and Mongo and excuse me, Tito Puente. So it made that connection to straight ahead jazz a little easier because of the jazz in Latin jazz or Afro-Cuban jazz.
But it's very interesting considering your career, that really what started you was the radio.
Right. Well, I'm a latecomer to radio. I didn't start radio until my late 30s. My initial career is I worked in retail jewelry in Southern California for many years because my dad owned a jewelry store and I grew up in jewelry. I became a gemologist and I worked in jewelry stores. I became a manager of a high-end jewelry store. But music was always my passion as a collector and attendee of music concerts because my ex had that same passion. Not necessarily jazz, but like I said, soul music, especially the Stax sound, I enjoyed more than the Motown sound. And then I became a hardcore funkster, seeing James Brown whenever he was in town, Kool and the Gang. Before they went disco, Tower of Power, and watch 103rd Street Band, groups like that, until jazz got inside of me.
Well, there you go. So, Bob, you answered this question for your first go-round, but tell us what keeps you excited about jazz these days?
Well, I find as I get older, it's harder and harder to keep up with what's going on. There's so much out there that in so many formats, and when you're not regularly reviewing, you're not being fed all the stuff. So I actually stopped voting in music polls a couple of years ago. And a great example is the Downbeat Critics poll that came out last week. I've only heard one of the top 10 albums that got voted. And that's because it's an artist, Tyshawn Sorey, who I've always been interested in. So I will go out and look for his new recordings. And in a way, what keeps me interested now, and this started during COVID, is, and I think Willard, well, you can both relate to this. You accumulate a lot of music over your life, and some of it you haven't heard in decades. Some of it you haven't heard since it came out. And I started getting out my Tom Lord discography and saying, okay, I'm just going to listen to every record Tommy Flanagan's on that I own, and however many weeks or months it takes, and then I'll move on to somebody else. And if you have enough time in the day when you're retired like I am, you can follow two people. So at the moment, I'm listening to Ellery Eskelin, the tenor saxophonist, and Muhal Richard Abrams' Black Saint recordings.
All right.
I got to Ellery because when Guy Klusevic died, I said, oh, let's hear some accordion. And I went from Guy to Dino Saluzzi to Andrea Parkins with Ellery. And Muhal, it's just, man, here's somebody. I love these albums. I haven't played them in so long. Let's go back and listen to them.
Yes, sir.
So that's what keeps me going.
All right. Well, so Arturo, the young tenor saxophonist Nubia Garcia was born in what city? Was Nubia Garcia born in A, Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, B, London in the UK, C, Georgetown, Guyana, D, Manchester in the UK, or E, Kingston, Jamaica?
Nubia, I know she's now in New York, but I know she came to fame and became a saxophonist of note in the UK, but she wasn't born there to the best of my knowledge. I know she came there from another country. And I'm going to go with Georgetown.
Georgetown, Guyana?
Yes, right.
I'm sorry, that is incorrect. Bob Blumenthal with a chance to steal the point. Bob, the young tenor saxophonist Nubia Garcia was born in what city? Was she born in A, Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, B, London, C, Georgetown has been eliminated, D, Manchester, or E, Kingston, Jamaica?
Well, I will trust Arturo when he says she wasn't born in the UK, which will eliminate 2 titles for me, which reduces it to Port of Spain and Kingston, I believe. Correct? That's what's left?
Yes.
Okay. And Garcia sounds more like a Trinidadian name than a Jamaican name. So I'm going to go with A, Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago.
Nope. Nubia Garcia was actually born in London.
Wow. Very surprising to me.
And to me.
So, Bob, you're up next.
Okay.
Bob, the drummer Marcus Baylor of the band The Baylor Project with his wife, the wonderful singer Jean Baylor. Marcus Baylor played with the Yellow Jackets and with what NEA jazz master? Would that have been A, Gary Bartz, B, Kenny Garrett, C, Kenny Barron, D, Herbie Hancock, or E, none of the above?
Now, once again, you start reading the question, and I said, "Oh, he played with the Yellow Jackets too," and there, that was eliminated right from the jump. So, looking over the choices, I don't recall him playing with Kenny Barron or Herbie Hancock. While it's possible that he played with Kenny Garrett, stylistically, it doesn't feel like the right fit to me. Not that he isn't a flexible musician. So to me, it's between A and E. And I'm going to say E, none of the above.
Arturo, with an opportunity to steal the point. Arturo, drummer Marcus Baylor of the band The Baylor Project with his wife, singer Jean Baylor. Marcus Baylor played with the Yellow Jackets and with what NEA jazz master? Would that have been A, Gary Bartz, B, Kenny Garrett, C, Kenny Barron, or D, Herbie Hancock, because E has been eliminated?
Oh, I really like the Baylor Project. They're very dynamic, especially on stage.
Yes, they are.
And Gene's a fine singer,
And they're playing the DC Jazz Fest.
Oh, very good. They deserve that. Well, I'm gonna go with the real Kenny G, Kenny Garrett.
That is correct. Marcus Baylor made several tours with the Kenny Garrett Band. So Arturo, our next questions, by the way, we're now in the jazz education realm. Arturo, drummer Carl Allen is a professor of jazz studies at what institution? Is Carl Allen a professor of jazz studies at A, USC, B, UCLA, C, the University of Michigan, D, the University of Missouri, Kansas City, also known as UMKC, or E, the University of Wisconsin?
Carl Allen, let's see, a Milwaukee drummer. It's great to have received recently a new album by him as a leader after many years as only being an accompanist because of his obligations as an educator. Bobby Watson's no longer at UMKC. Mom. Well, I'm going to go with his home state, the University of Wisconsin.
That too is incorrect. So Bob, with an opportunity to steal the point. Bob, drummer Carl Allen, and as Arturo pointed out, band leader Carl Allen as well, is a professor of jazz studies at what institution? Would that be A, USC, University of Southern California, B, UCLA, C, the University of Michigan, or D, the University of Missouri in Kansas City? E, the University of Wisconsin has been eliminated.
Well, I will admit that, like Arturo, I made the Milwaukee, Madison, Wisconsin connection. So but that's off the board. I also thought for quite a while he was at Juilliard, but that's not a choice. He may have left there for another position. So I, again, am left to roll the dice, which have been coming up snake eyes all day, and say D, UMKC.
You finally hit.
Well, wasn't Carl at Juilliard for quite a while?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
He was indeed. Yep. So, Bob, with an opportunity to continue playing catch-up on the jazz education side. Bob, trombonist and baritone saxophonist, and he's actually a multi-instrumentalist. Michael Dees is a professor of jazz trombone. Where? Would that be A, the University of Michigan, B, Ohio State University, C, Michigan State University, D, Penn State University, or E, Berklee College of Music?
Well, I know didn't he win in 2 categories in the recent Critics Poll, if I'm not mistaken? Maybe best trombone and best upcoming baritone player or something like that.
Yeah, maybe did, yeah.
Very talented guy who I always associate with the New York scene, so that doesn't help me at all here. I will be tremendously embarrassed if it's Berklee College, since I'm in Boston and I'm not going to select it. And I'm aware that there's a pretty good jazz program at Michigan State. I'm not really aware of the programs at the other universities. So I'm going to go with C, Michigan State University.
And that is correct. Michael Dees is in residence as an instructor at Michigan State University. So we are tightened up the score now. It's Arturo 5 and Bob 3, and Arturo is up next. Arturo, the late Hammond B3 organ master, Dr. Lonnie Smith, was born in what city? Was Lonnie Smith born in A, Syracuse, New York, B, Buffalo, New York, C, Brooklyn, New York, D, Albany, New York, or E, Lackawanna, New York?
Well, I'm glad this particular question came up at this particular time because I knew I'm 99% sure I knew the answer before you even gave the choices, because as a big fan of the Turbinator, and He used to come out here quite often to Colorado to play the Telluride Jazz Festival. Got to talk to him quite a lot. And a former Denverite who's now an outstanding B3 player in New York. And the Turbinator, Dr. Lonnie, was his mentor, Pat Bianchi. Lackawanna, New York, the suburb of Buffalo.
And that is correct. But now we come to our bonus round. And as you know, the rules of the game are that Bob Blumenthal can catch up by correctly responding to our bonus question. So, Bob.
Okay.
The former Manhattan Jazz Loft performance space, known as the Jazz Forum, which was run by a man named Mark Morganelli. The Jazz Forum was last located on which New York street? Was the Jazz Forum located on A, 7th Avenue, B, 6th Avenue, C, Broadway, D, Bleecker Street, or E, 8th Street?
Arturo, I want to congratulate you on your victory.
It ain't over till it's over.
I never attended the Jazz Forum, and this would be a shot in the dark. I'm going to say C, Broadway.
And you guessed correctly.
Had to happen sooner or later, right?
So now we are at sudden death. And since Arturo was up ahead at the end of regulation, Arturo goes first. Arturo, who was Dr. Billy Taylor, the great pianist, who was Dr. Billy Taylor's last drummer for his renowned Jazz at the Kennedy Center series before Billy Taylor joined the Ancestors? Would that have been A, Steve Johns, B, Bernard Harper, C, Bobby Thomas, D, Grady Tate, or E, Albert Tootie Heath?
Let's see. I'm not overly familiar with his Kennedy Center performances. While we owe so much to Dr. Billy Taylor, the Jazzmobile, and so much more. I'm going to go with Bernard Harper.
That is correct. And we have a new champion of Jazzology. Congratulations to Arturo Gomez.
Oh, man, I don't know how I did it.
On winning our 79th episode of Jazzology. It was indeed Bernard Harper who was Billy Taylor's drummer there.
Well, I made the connection for the Baltimore.
Yes, we encourage everyone to try your hand and play Jazzology. Congratulations to Arturo. If you or anyone you know would like to become a contestant on Jazzology, simply click on the link below and fill out the form. You must be 18 years old or older, and be sure to follow us on social media at Jazzology Trivia Show to get all the latest news and updates. Many thanks to Bob Blumenthal and Arturo Gomez and to everyone who joined us for our 79th episode of Jazzology. And if you're in the Denver area, tune in Arturo on KUVO. Remember, if you missed the show live, you can find the archive on the Savage Content YouTube channel. Thank you both.
Thank you.